Okay, here's the next in our settlement revision videos for your GCSE exam. A bit of a short one, this one. Just going to focus on one particular theme, and that's the idea of problems within MEDC urban areas, and then the development, the idea of redevelopment that has taken place to try and deal with some of these problems. Okay, so again, sort of the theme of 4-mark questions. Often it's like identify, describe and explain, identify and explain 2 problems which can exist in urban areas and MEDCs. You might get a picture to support it. So you might get like a bit of a rundown in a city area where you've got, say, sort of something like the pictures on the board, if you can see them, where you've got like run-down terraced houses, or you've got empty warehouses, or you've got closed-down businesses, and so on and so forth, okay? On the board then are the sorts of problems that you might go for. Old housing and housing styles that often sort of problems with like damp, often have structural damage to them that can be expensive to try and repair. You've got traffic on street parking, because particularly in the inner city, and we are talking about the inner city when we're talking about urban areas, okay? So in your inner city areas where your roads were perhaps built prior to the large volume of traffic that we have on our roads today, we get congestion is a huge problem in MEDC urban areas, but also on-street parking, because obviously our terraced houses that we've seen in a previous video, they don't come with garages, so people therefore have to park on the road, and again that can block up roads, make it difficult for cars to get down, lead to congestion. There is a perception that in schools in the inner city there are often low results in schools, low exam results in schools, and obviously that leads to high levels of unemployment, and you can branch that out into other problems like high crime rates, where you've got young people who don't have the qualifications, young people who then don't have aspirations to maybe succeed, have low aspirations, end up turning to crime, okay? That links obviously with high unemployment. You tend to have a poor range of shops, so you have very low grade, very basic shops. You won't have a lot of chain stores, you won't attract sort of big investors, because the area can often end up with a poor reputation. And we all know, we all know an urban area where we have an area that is perceived to be very rough, very run down, somewhere like a bit of a no-go area, okay? So it gets that poor reputation. There are often social problems. High crime rate is obviously a social problem. There can be a high level of people on state benefit, claiming state benefit. There can be high levels of drug use. There can be high levels of social problems like alcohol abuse, and so on and so forth. And sometimes racial issues. There can often be racial tensions. If you bring it up to the modern era, things like gang problems and gangs that exist, and therefore a lot of youth crime in that sense. So from what I've just said, from the examples that I've just given, for a 4-mark, your first mark is going to come from identifying a problem, like low exam results in schools, and your second mark would then come from explaining why that's a problem, and you can link, these ideas together. So be aware of the theory that goes with, because MEDC urban areas are becoming run down, because counter-urbanisation is taking place, and therefore people are moving away. What's left behind are areas that have a number of problems. And so what we've seen, particularly in this country, during the 80s and the 90s, moving into the new millennium, is the idea of urban redevelopment, okay? Redeveloping, rebranding an urban area or areas within a city to try and improve their reputation, to try and solve some of the problems that we've seen on the previous slide, okay? Urban regeneration is slightly different. Urban regeneration is taking something that's already there, a building that's already there, like an old warehouse, and regenerating it, bringing it back to life, sometimes as like a shopping area, maybe with like food and bars as well as an example, or turning it into apartments, okay, and sort of gutting out the warehouse, rebuilding the inside, and then coming out with obviously apartments that you can sell to people to encourage them to stay in our urban area. So your case study that you would use for urban redevelopment and regeneration is in Sheffield, okay? And obviously you've got this in your case study booklet. And the key thing is to remember the 4 areas. There's been lots of redevelopment and regeneration that's gone on in Sheffield. In terms of the background, obviously, if your question asks you about reasons why redevelopment and regeneration was needed, it was mainly because of the closure of the steel industries, okay? And particularly in certain areas of Sheffield, that led to widespread unemployment. It led to a need need to sort of retrain people and give them new skills. It also led to the demolition of a lot of steel mills, leaving wasteland and sort of areas like brownfield sites, remember that term, brownfield sites, that needed to be redeveloped, or leaving old buildings that needed to be regenerated, okay? So there's 4 key areas, okay, where in Walkley, an area called Walkley, which is highlighted up here, in this sort of northeastern area of Sheffield, where your old terraced housing and flats in the area is being cleared and replaced by modern houses and apartments, to try and attract young professionals and improve the appearance of the area, okay? So bringing sort of young skilled people who are going to spend their money and therefore create what's called a multiplier effect, where if there's a demand there, new businesses set up, and that then becomes like a wealthy hub, a wealthy location within the city of Sheffield. You've also got the redevelopment of an area known as West 1 within the CBD, okay, containing a number of old brownfield sites and wasteland. Old buildings have been knocked down, and they've been replaced by luxury apartments with shops and bars and restaurants at street level, okay? And that area of West 1, basically you've got a number of eateries, a number of bars. It's a very popular area for young people in the evening. It's a very popular area for students as well, okay? So the key thing is obviously left behind by a change in industry, left behind by the closure of steel mills and associated industry, and then you've got your brownfield sites that have been rebuilt. In the lower Don Valley, that is your biggest steel making area. That was the location of all of those steel mills, and they closed in the late 1980s, and that area has been developed so that we avoid derelict buildings and brownfield sites. And we now have Meadow Hall there. That's obviously been built in the Lower Don Valley. The Motorpoint Arena and the English Institute of Sport, as Sheffield moves to rebrand itself as a city of sport, a city of entertainment, like a student city, and so on and so forth. Okay, and finally, in this box here that obviously you've got in your case study, you've got redevelopment in the CBD, and it speaks about the digital campus, the winter gardens, and the very famous Park Hill flats, okay? A real good example of urban regeneration. Those flats can't be knocked down because they are listed buildings because of their architecture. So what they are doing is, we've got here, flats have been taken over by Urban Splash, good little bit of place detail there, get the name of the company in, Urban Splash. They are a listed building and so cannot be knocked down. Instead they are being refurbished and redeveloped into upmarket flats, businesses and affordable social housing, okay? If a question asks you about how sustainable a redevelopment project is, that's very important. The idea of social housing, because that means that the population who already live there can stay there. If they're renting, or if the council owns those housing, then that housing, then obviously local people should be able to afford to buy them off the council and stay in them. Okay, so the idea of urban redevelopment: know your problems first that exist in MEDC urban areas, particularly in a city, and then usually. This is a good case study, obviously this is your urban redevelopment case study, but you can take the theory of what's here and also use it in 4-mark questions about, you know, ways that you could improve an urban area. Where, you know, if you've got a picture and it said give 2 ways that problems can be solved in this urban area, you've got that option. Okay, so urban redevelopment: know your causes, know your effects, know your knock-on effects of it. Okay, causes, often the closure of industries, and then know your case study, redevelopment in Sheffield.